Hello? Hello? Is there anybody here? Where? Is there? Is that a light? Is it power? Is this thing on? No. Oh, wait. This thing is on? I haven't seen one of these in years. How is it still working? I know what to do.
Good morning and welcome to your new favorite brand new morning radio show, The Deddy Bones Show. That's right, it's me, your new favorite morning radio show host, Deddy Bones. Let's go ahead and take a look at that weather. The high today is going to be around 233 degrees Kelvin. Going to be a nice warm one, probably the warmest day we've had in quite a few years. But remember, just because it's going to be a warm day outside doesn't mean you don't need your radiation suits. Remember, kids, always wear protection. Well, that's all for the weather. Let's get back to the hits. See what we've got lined up here, and... Sorry. Stop that. Okay. Sorry about that. Looks like I'm having a few technical difficulties on my end. Give me just a moment. Alright, let's see what we've got lined up today. Looks like our first one's gonna be the Amarok. You remember this hit? Classic disco, late 70s, early 80s. All the best discotheques, proms, and even your grandma's bridge club knew how to get down to this one. Let's roll the hits.
Well, I guess I better get started here on this audio recording thing. Feel it's important to let you know who I am and what I'm doing. They call me Tex, at least when I'm not in Texas. When I'm at home, they just call me Tyler. You know, there's 28 million Texans, and somehow I represent all of them to all of y'all. But I can tell the difference, because I ain't one of them hipster millennials keeping Austin weird, and you're not gonna find me in one of them boardroom business meetings in Houston or Dallas. I think you could call me one of those salt-of-the-earth people, but I'm not really sure what that means. My daddy worked the oil fields, as did my grandpa, as did his father before him. It was their hard work that built Texas, and they were proud of it. Even as a young boy, I thought I would follow their footsteps, but my father told me that I should go to school. And to be honest, I probably should have, and I probably would have. But when I was 12 years old, I found my true passion: hunting. Now, I know it may give some of you left-wing liberals heart palpitations, but I've been shooting guns of some sort since I was 7 years old. By the time my uncle took me on that first hunting trip, I was a pretty good shot, and I knew how to safely handle a firearm. My father did warn me that we may not even see a deer, much less shoot one, so I shouldn't get my hopes up and just learn to enjoy the experience. Well, we went to my uncle's favorite spot and set up behind a blind in this line of sight of a salt lick he had set up about the week before. We hadn't even been there an hour when my uncle tapped me on my arm and pointed towards that salt lick. At first, I didn't know what he was pointing at. Everything looked exactly the same as it had 2 minutes ago when I had last looked. Well, I scanned the clearing around the salt lick for several moments, and I was about to ask my uncle what he was pointing at when just a little bit of movement caught my eye. At the back of that clearing, behind a large oak, I could see something moving. Suddenly, there was no sound at all. We were probably 100 yards away from that tree, but it seemed so close, like I could just reach out and touch it. The first thing I saw was its big brown nose stick out from around the tree, then its long head with its big eyes, ears pointed straight up, swiveling around, listening for danger. And then it stepped out, showing me its long neck, and then its shoulder. And there she was. Now, growing up in the country, I had seen deer before, even a buck or two, but this one was different. She was beautiful, and I knew she was mine. My hands began to sweat and shake. It felt like I'd been holding my breath for an hour, but I didn't dare exhale. You see, I'd been shooting paper targets with these anatomical pictures of deer on them for weeks, and I suddenly realized how foolish that was. Because there she was, standing right there, perfectly still, and my heart was in my throat, and I couldn't remember where the colored targets had been on those pictures. As I raised my rifle, I could feel my heartbeat pounding all the way up to my ears. I looked through my scope, and then panic set in. I couldn't find the deer. I had to check again with my naked eye, and she was there, cautiously moving towards that salt lick. Well, I jerked my rifle back up to my eye, and some buckle or clip on my jacket made a tiny, ever so faint little tink sound, hitting the rifle. In any other moment, no one would have even noticed the sound. But in that instant, well, I may as well have just yelled, "Hey deer, look out, run away!" Now, everyone was holding their breath. Me, my uncle, and the deer. It's funny what your senses can do under stress. Suddenly, I could see every single water molecule in the fog of that deer's breath. Count every blade of grass in the 100 yards between us. I could smell the dirt, the dead leaves, even the salt of that salt lick. Hell, I could even taste the pemmican bar I'd had for breakfast like an hour before, and my mouth was simultaneously dry and salivating at the same time. I don't know how long I stared through that scope. Could have been 2 seconds, could have been 2 hours. But then, I started to go through the motions I had practiced. Slowly, I centered my crosshairs, drawing smaller circles on the deer. I ever so gently, finally, let out the breath I've been holding, allowing myself to relax into the shot. Just as the last bit of air left my lungs, I began to squeeze the trigger. A bullet leaves a deer rifle at around 3,000 feet per second, or nearly 3 times the speed of sound. Scientifically speaking, that deer didn't even hear the gunshot. But the weird thing is, neither did I. I remember pulling that trigger, but I swear all I heard was the hammer click. If my gun hadn't recoiled, I would have thought my ammunition was bad. Looking up from my scope, I panicked a little again. I couldn't see the deer. The brief moment of clarity I had had while taking the shot was gone, and my hands were sweating and my feet went cold in my boots. My eyes darted back and forth, looking for the deer running away. Without realizing it, I had jumped to my feet and almost dropped my rifle. But then I felt a gentle, quick tug on my gun and looked down to see my uncle holding the barrel, pointing it away from himself. We locked eyes for a long moment before he said, "Are you just going to stand there? You going to go check out your first deer?" I don't have to tell you, from that moment, I was hooked. There's nothing like the thrill of the hunt. It's like kissing your crush while riding a roller coaster while you catch a game-winning touchdown. For the next 6 years, deer and geese were enough to keep me satisfied. But as I got older, I knew I needed more. I started taking trips to hunt mule deer and even elk. I've been colder and more tired than any man should be, all for the hunt. But even with those challenges, I started to lose that rush. That is, until I got cornered by a buck. Let me set the stage for you. I had been following some deer tracks, and I found this clover patch that they led to, so I posted up behind a big tree and waited. I had my rifle resting in the crook of a branch pointed towards the clover patch when I heard a soft crunch of leaves not too far behind me. So I froze, not wanting to spook whatever it was. There was a pause, and then a few more cautious steps. So I turned my head ever so slightly, as slow as I could, trying to use my peripherals to see what it was. After a few more steps, a huge buck came into view, and it wasn't more than 10 feet away from me. My heart started pounding like a freight train. It was all I could do to control my breathing. I knew that any movement could spook it, and I would lose it in the trees before I could swing my rifle around and get off a shot. All I had to do was wait for it to move past me and head for that clover. I continued to suppress my breathing, but my blood pressure was so high it was giving me a headache. I could feel the pounding in my ears. As this buck stepped into view, I could see its razor-sharp antlers on its head like a giant crown. He was huge, at least 300 pounds, and just as he came up beside me, he let out a snort. And I'm not talking a little sneeze or cough or nothing. He was the king of these woods, and I was trespassing, and he was pissed. Now, I know you're thinking, just shoot him. But you got to remember, my rifle's up in that crook of that branch, and it's in the way. And even if it wasn't, that buck was no more than 5 feet away from me. I'd never be able to turn for a shot quick enough. And this ain't no Bambi or Rudolph. This is a 300-pound, red-blooded, territorial killing machine. Them antlers ain't the silly plastic things you put on the top of your SUV or minivan. These things are hard as bone, sharp as a knife, and there's 10 of them, and they're pointed right at me. He's lowered his head, and he's kicking the ground like a bull. At this point in my hunting career, the rushes I would get had died down considerably and had become something almost routine. When this buck appeared, I had felt the usual little rush of excitement. He was a big buck and would have been a good prize. But when he turned on me, everything inside me did a somersault. My adrenaline spiked so wildly, it made my head spin. Every fiber of my being told me to run. Some real fight or flight kind of stuff. But I knew I could never outrun this charging buck. The instant I moved, he would gore me and then trample me. For the first time in my years of hunting, I was afraid. But the only thing I could do was stand there by the sheer force of will and literally face my fear. Now, as seems to be common in these types of situations, I don't know if he stared me down for 2 seconds or 2 hours. He kept pawing the ground and snorting, shaking his antlers back and forth. Chances are he could smell me, but he couldn't make out my outline distinctly from the tree, as long as I didn't move. I don't know if you've ever tried to hold your breath while your heart is pounding, but it hurts. A lot. Just when I got to the point where I thought I couldn't hold it anymore, though, the buck lifted his head. He stopped pawing the ground, shook his antlers once more, then took a couple steps back. He knew that something was there, and he was agitated about it, but he couldn't decide if I was a threat or not. Still eyeing my tree, he started circling. And just as my excitement had turned to true fear a few moments before, it started to change back to excitement. I felt a tingling sensation rush up my legs. My arms felt weightless, and all my senses were heightened. That old rush was back, and it was stronger than ever. Just moments ago, this beast was threatening to kill me, but now he was about to walk into my crosshairs. In the years since then, the only word I've come up with to describe that feeling is a feeling of power, a dominance over nature. Sure, you can swat a fly or hit a squirrel with your car, but when you go one-on-one, head-on, man versus nature, and win? Well, there ain't nothing like that. I knew from that day on, I'd never be able to hunt another deer or turkey. It was time for me to move on to bigger, more dangerous game.
Well, that's not exactly the song I remember it being, but you know what? That's all right. So far, we've only listened to the first side of the cassette. Before we flip it over, let's take a little break, though, and catch a word from our sponsors. Well, it looks like we actually don't have any sponsors yet for the Deddy Bones Show, but that's not going to stop us from jumping right back into side 2 of the Amarok on your new favorite morning radio show, the Deddy Bones Show.
Alright, I know all the tree-hugging animal lovers are about to start picketing my house, but hold your horses. All my hunts were licensed legal affairs. I didn't go on them fake big game trophy hunts in Africa that doctors go on and people get pissed about on social media. I hunt predators that are threats to farmers and villagers. And I'm not just talking about the jungles and savannas in Africa. Everything from 300-pound razorbacks in Arkansas that are destroying fields to mountain lions stalking the suburbs in Arizona to black bears in New Jersey going dumpster diving. These animals are more than a nuisance. They're threats to humans. For the 10,000 years or so that humans have walked the earth, it's only in the last couple hundred years that we've really got the upper hand over nature. And it hasn't been through getting bigger or stronger. We ain't evolving or anything like that. It's through our cunning. A leopard only weighs about 70 pounds, but they can take down a 300-pound wildebeest by themselves. It takes cunning to be a predator, and there ain't no greater test of that than when you are hunting a predator. Which is why I'm in Tassayujack. If you don't know where Tassayujack is, it's a small Inuit village in northern Canada. It's part of the province of Quebec, but it's so far north, it's 90 miles closer to Greenland than it is to Quebec City, and it's 2,000 miles away from Texas. They don't get too many visitors here, as you can imagine, especially not this late in December. I had to pay a brush pilot double to fly me the 70 miles from Tassayujack, and there's no promise that he'll wait for me if the weather turns bad. But I know it'll be worth it. A few months back, you may remember, a picture was posted online of a paw print of an as-of-yet unidentified animal. At first, it just looked like a regular wolf's paw, but a second picture was uploaded with the human hand for reference. A forest ranger took the picture, and his palm almost fit in the metacarpal pad. The whole paw was bigger than his hand. Of course, everyone and their mother called it a fake, but several images were posted by the ranger, and no one could prove they were fakes. Biologists estimated that if they were real, a wolf with paws that big would be at least 6 feet tall and weigh anywhere from 300 to 800 pounds. But this was all speculation because no other proof was found. Normally something like this wouldn't interest me, and I had pretty much forgotten about it when I got an email. During my career as a hunter, I have worked with several state and national parks, helping them with problem predators they had or population control. Apparently my name was given to the Canadian Forest Service, because that was who emailed me. Dear Mr. Carson, it read, this is Ranger Atagata Ulak of the Canadian Forest Service. You have been recommended to us for your expertise on predators, and I feel we may be in need of your services. Please contact us at your earliest convenience. Well, I call them back, and long story short, those pictures online were real. The authorities believe it to be some new species of wolf and want my help in tracking it down. Well, I tell him I ain't no biologist or nothing. I'm just a hunter. He tells me he knows that, and that's why he contacted me. Apparently, the ranger that took those pictures was observing a herd of caribou and has since gone missing, and several hunters from the local villages have also gone missing in the area. It's a dangerous and desolate area, he tells me, but to have this many people go missing all at once is beyond unusual. This is interesting and all, I says to him, but even I think you're grasping at straws if you're suggesting that there's some as of yet unidentified and undocumented species of wolf that has suddenly reappeared and started killing people. He tells me he knows. But there's also been another incident that they are working very hard to keep quiet. Just a week ago, he says, 3 engineers and a pilot from a logging company also went missing. The company reported it to the Forest Service, and using the GPS from their plane, they were found. At least their plane was found, along with a lot of their blood. Now, he's got me interested, because you can guess what else they found around the plane. Giant wolf tracks. But you may be wondering why they came to me, as did I. But he told me the Forestry Service is stretched too thin in those regions, and the local authorities are almost non-existent. The military isn't interested in using resources to search such a vast area, and the local Inuit populations are too superstitious to pursue what they are calling the Amarok. According to them, the Amarok is some legendary wolf that will kill hunters who kill too much and disturb the balance of nature. But myths and legends don't leave pools of blood and giant paw prints. So here I am, good old Texas boy, watching the sun set at 3:45 in the afternoon, standing on an airstrip with entire mountains of snow piled up at the ends. To give you an idea of how far north I am, the Trans-Tayuga Road is the northernmost road in North America that connects to the rest of the continent, and it ends 267 miles directly south of here. And if you want to drive to that point, it's a 1,200-mile drive from Quebec City. That's the same distance as driving from Dallas to Winnipeg. Not sure what the temperature is here because everything's in Celsius, but it's so cold it hurts. Never have I ever been more literally bundled up like an Eskimo. There's a man on the snowmobile waving to me a bit of ways. It's Ranger Atagata Ulak, and he takes me into the village. At his station, Ranger Rick fills me in on more details and shows me the unreleased photo of the engineer's plane. I've seen some pretty mangled animals in my time, but those pictures, they make my stomach lurch. Maybe it's because I know that those used to be human bodies, or maybe it's something else. One body is completely torn in half, its entrails like strewn between the two halves. Another was completely dismembered and spread across the area. A third was halfway into the airplane, but its back had been filleted open. Everything torn to ribbons, like exposing its bones. The last body appeared to have tried to run away, but he'd been caught and drugged back to the plane. That poor fellow appears to have been alive when he was drugged back. Then whatever did this, well, you can see the pictures. That's what he told me. Now, I've seen killings before. This wasn't any kind of fight. This wasn't even a feeding. This was a massacre. Whatever did this was trying to send a message. Looking at those pictures, that feeling in my stomach began to change. My hands began to shake. My chest tightened, and my head had just started to spin. I suddenly began to question what I was doing here. But then, I remembered that buck. Well, it's been 4 days since I arrived in Tasiujak. It's a good thing I'm keeping this as an audio journal, because my fingers are too frozen to write legibly. Everything is cold. My fingers, my boots, the wind, the days, the nights. Somehow, even the sun seems cold. Like it's somehow stealing the warmth from this side of the earth to keep the other side warm. I'll never complain about summer in Texas again. You know, another thing that's cold, is my gun. 4 days of excursions and I haven't even had a reason to shoulder it. In case you're wondering, it's a CZ550, modified to take a 600 caliber overkill super magnum cartridge. If you look up the definition of elephant gun in the dictionary, this is it. Your standard .308 may give a satisfying little thump back in your shoulder when you fire it, but this thing will practically blow your damn arm off. It will blast its 900 grain bullet out its barrel at 2,450 feet per second. That's a bullet 6 times bigger than a .308, going more than twice the speed of sound. It'll impact with a force of 6 tons. It's literally like getting hit by a Mack truck. And all I've done is carried around on my back for 4 days. If I was hunting any other predator, I'd be trying to negotiate a way to postpone this hunt till spring. Of course, there's always a chance that a blizzard's going to pop up and I'm going to be here till then anyways. The days are so short, it's disorienting. There's barely 6 hours of daylight, which in hunting terms is not enough. I'm able to take the Ranger snowmobile out, but there are no real roads and the snowdrifts are getting deeper as new snow falls every day. And with that new snowfall, the landscape changes every day too. It's been a week now and every hill, creek, and frozen lake looks the same, even though the GPS and maps swear I haven't been to that spot before. I'm having no luck finding any sign of this wolf. The snowfall covers any tracks that were more than a day old, and a creature that large would have to cover miles and miles of territory to find enough prey to support itself. I'm beginning to realize that this is like trying to find a needle in a haystack. I know it's just an expression to you, but if you really think about it, you'll understand just how impossible that seems. I've changed my tactics a little. I'm trying to find out where this Amarok may live. But even that has proven impossible. Ground is pretty much frozen all winter, so digging a den seems unlikely, and there aren't enough trees to create any kind of shelter. I haven't seen any signs of hunts or kills either. I'm starting to think that if this thing was ever even real, it's probably already moved on from here. It's real. That crafty son of a bitch is real. All this time, it's been real. It is smart. It is so smart. And think, I was gonna leave tomorrow. Okay, let me explain. Every day, I've been making these looping excursions, trying to cover as much ground as possible, always coming back a different way than I came out. Well, today, I got a little disoriented and I was further away from the village than I intended to be when it got dark. I figured the best way to get back was to just backtrack the way I came. And it's a good thing I did. I was halfway back when I saw it. I had stopped for a minute to adjust my goggles, and when I looked at the snow in the headlight beam of my snowmobile, there it was. Now, I know you're thinking that if I'm this excited I must have seen the Amarok. But no, I didn't. But what I did see was a giant wolf track, as big as a bear paw, in between the tread tracks of my snowmobile from my trip out. And these tracks was coming towards me. That son of a bitch had been following me. That is smart. He is a smart predator. He's trying to track me. This changes everything. By the time I saw those tracks, it was far too dark and dangerous for me to do anything about it. But you can bet your ass I'm going to do something about it tomorrow. He's real. I'm bringing my recorder with me today to better document this event, this day. I'm going to head about 5 miles east to a large lake that's frozen over. This lake is more than 3 miles across, so I'm thinking it'll give me a chance to catch sight of the Amarok when I reach the far side. I get over there, and he's going to have to just come in a straight line right behind me, right? On a flat, open plain. Should give me a pretty good shot. Well, I'm at the lake, and it looks like the wind last night blew most of the snow into these deep drifts at the edges of the lake, so I should be able to make some pretty good time going across. No sign of the wolf yet, but she'll come. I know she will. I've made it across the lake and set up behind a snowdrift. It's a rare sunny day, and the reflections off the snow is blinding. I got filters on my scope, but the glare is greatly reducing visibility. I've been sitting here for almost 2 hours. I haven't seen anything. But it's not the waiting that bothers me. I can see some serious weather developing behind me, and the wind's starting to pick up. Storms can really pick up a lot of energy as they come over Hudson Bay, and I don't want to be stuck in the middle of this lake when... Wait. Is that... Hold on. There's something there. It's about a mile and a half out. Dang, this glare is really bad. No. Damn it. Maybe not. Alright, so I was looking through my scope, and I thought I saw something. But when I switched my binoculars to get better view, couldn't find anything. The lake is pretty featureless, so any kind of movement or animal should stand out, but I don't see nothing there now. No, damn it, now the wind's picking up more. Looks like this weather's about to turn real bad, real fast. I don't want to, but I better head back. Okay, I lied. I was picking everything up, fixing to leave, but I took one last look through my binoculars and something caught my eye again. But this time, it was at the edge of the lake amongst snowdrift. This was closer than what I saw before, but I still didn't get a good look. I watched for 30 more minutes, but I didn't see nothing else. Now the storm's almost on top of me and it's moving fast. I have to go now. I'm halfway across the lake. I don't know if you can hear me over the wind. Snow has blown back over most of my tracks, but I can barely see, still visible. It's more Amarok tracks. I knew it. It did follow me. But visibility is fading fast. I have to keep riding. But that son of a bitch was... Wait, what was that? Okay.
Well then, that's a little too bad. I was just starting to get to like that guy. Guess you could say when an Amarok has a meal, he really likes to wolf it down. I was looking through the studio and I found an entire case of these tapes. I'm going to go ahead and keep broadcasting them for you as long as you're going to keep listening. Out there, whoever you are. This is your host, Deddy Bones, signing off on another episode of The Deddy Bones Show. Was that a little overdramatic? Hey guys, this is Tom, and this is my podcast. I did all the voice acting and editing on this episode. Special thanks to my friend Ben Templeman.
for providing me with a little bit of music and helping me just get the audio just right. You should go check him out on Twitter at Ben Templeman, and be sure to check out his work on Spotify as Ben T and the River. They've got an album that they put out last year, so go check it out. And another special thank you to my friend Tenzin down at the boardroom down in Middletown for being there to encourage me and help me finish this podcast and keeping me focused and motivated on it. And a special thank you to you, my fans. Well, if this is the first time you've listened to this episode, I hope you're already a fan. If not, I've got more coming for you, and I hope you can enjoy them. If you'd like to keep up with this, it's funny, I've been practicing and doing that voice, and so now it starts sneaking out on me. I've been doing the Deddy Bones voice, and so it keeps... I hit my head on the microphone. I am such an amateur. Such an amateur. If you want to get in touch with me, follow along, see what we're up to, you can find us on Twitter at Deddy Bones, DEDDYBONES. You can email me at thededdyboneshow@gmail.com. And if you want to help us out, best thing you can do is to tweet about this show, share it with your friends, use the hashtag DeddyBones for a chance to be mentioned, to perhaps have a character named after you. All the good stuff is out there. It helps you, helps me. It'll be lots of fun for all of us. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode with me, with you, your friends, your loved ones, your dog, your cat, even your fish. If you got fish, no hating on the fish people. All right, see you guys next time.